around so we don't have to stand in line.
That goes for my class too, so you do not have to stay and wave at me. It's fine. I know you're here. Okie dokie, let's get this show on the road. Do you want to, Michael, do you want to introduce or no? Okay, good. All right, so welcome to the very first event of St. Charles Community College's Democracy Days 2021. For those of you who were students here last year, we did everything remotely, which was okay, I guess. The in-person is way better. So we're back in person, we have masks, and that's okay, but we're here, and that's way better than hiding behind a computer screen. And this is also our very first 8:30 session ever, yay. I volunteered to do it because I drink a ridiculous amount of coffee and am totally alive by 4:30 in the morning. So there's that. Today's presentation with me is Major League Baseball and the United States Constitution. Some of you out there are my students, and some of you are my former students. And you guys know that the way that I teach is I take things in American government and compare it to something in pop culture to make it more relatable. And so if there's anything that people in St. Louis all get around and rally around, it's our baseball team, the St. Louis Cardinals. And so I am Lisa Randoll, and let's investigate how Major League Baseball compares to the United States Constitution. Okay, so the first section that we're going to go over is a bunch of just random general information. Okay, all Major League Baseball games begin with the national anthem. I think there's one Canadian team, so 95% of the time the games begin with the American national anthem because almost all of the teams are here in the United States. But under the rare occasion when you're in Montreal, the game will be, the first national anthem will be the Canadian national anthem. The Constitution also has a beginning as well, and it's known as the Preamble. It's a summary of what's covered in the document, but it's more than that. While most Supreme Court decisions are made using the body of the Constitution, the nuts and bolts that we'll talk about in a few minutes, some decisions have been used, have used the preamble to defend the legal stances that the Supreme Court justices take. I encourage you in your own time to go and research those. If you type in preamble and Supreme Court decisions, there's like a ton of them. So know that the preamble isn't just like, you know how when you guys write an essay and you're trying to impress your English teacher, you're like, flowery language, sentence, sentence, sentence. That's not what the preamble is. The preamble was written with intent. All right, next is the number 7. The championship of Major League Baseball, the World Series, is a best-of-7 series. Total, there can be only 7 games. The first team to win a majority of them, 4, is the winner. I don't know if you guys remember, but back in 2011, the Cardinals won the World Series. It was the season that got me into baseball. And that World Series went 7 games. The Constitution has 7 sections or articles. So the Constitution is divided into 7 sections, just like the World Series is divided into 7 games. All right, this is important. This is the foundation on which our modern political parties view the world. And it's perspective. So I think most of you would agree. How many of you have been to a baseball game before? Cardinal game? Yes. All right, how many of you have not been? Before you die, you have to go. If for no other reason than the $15 nachos, you have to go. Okay, so there's a huge difference between seeing the game live versus seeing the game on TV. Those of you who have been to a game, what made it special other than the nachos? Because I totally already said that. Hands. What made it special? Go. Yeah, so you're in the crowd. Yes, totally different. What else? What else makes it special when you're there? Go ahead.
No commercials.
Thank the Lord. And if I see another one of those Liberty Mutual commercials, for real. Okay, what else? What else makes it special to go to the games? The atmosphere? What else makes it special? No one said the smell. It totally has a smell. Okay, so what about at home? So at home there's commercials. At home you're watching it by yourself. What else makes watching it at home different? Yeah, like when you're at home, when you're watching, they usually only show the pitcher, the catcher, the home plate umpire, and the batter. All kinds of crazy stuff happens behind those guys. And so, yeah, you don't get to see everything. And when you're way up in the nosebleed section, you see everything, including the people in front of you, which sometimes is more entertaining than the game. But there you go. What else? What else is different at home? So to play devil's advocate on what you just said, you can actually see the strike zone. So if your goal is to see, like, if the umpire is doing a good job, you can see it way better up close than you can way back in the bleachers. Game at home. I like watching ball games in both ways. Okay, the point here, though, is that there's two ways to view a baseball game. There's the live game, and then there's the watching it at home on TV. And there's two ways that constitutional law scholars view the Constitution. Some view it as a literal document, meaning that they interpret the Constitution word for word. And then there's another school of constitutional law that believes that it should be read as a living document, meaning that the Constitution should be interpreted based on the time in which it's being read. Example, the Founding Fathers did not one time in the Constitution mention marijuana or abortion or same-sex marriage. None of that stuff's in there. But yet, the Supreme Court justices have used things the Founding Fathers said in the Constitution to render decisions on those things. So they have interpreted the Constitution. That is what reading it as a living document means. Typically, so this is not true of everyone, so full disclosure, typically if you are more conservative, you tend to see the Constitution as a literal document. And if you tend to lean liberal or Democrat, you tend to view the Constitution as a living document. Obviously, that is not true of every conservative and every liberal, but that is, in general, how most people on both sides view it. Okay, now we're moving on to the next. So for those of you not super familiar with baseball, the game is divided up into 9 innings. If you're a football person, there's 4 quarters. If you're a soccer person, there's 2 halves. When baseball, there's 9 innings. And in the top of each inning, the visiting team gets to bat and try to score points or runs. And in the bottom of an inning, the home team gets a chance to bat and score points or runs. And we have an upper house and a lower house in Congress, and that's known as a bicameral legislature. The upper house is the Senate, and the lower house is the House of Representatives. And the reason the House is the lower house and the Senate is the upper house is it's considered more prestigious to be a senator than it is to be a member of the House. Senators have longer terms, they get paid more, there are fewer of them, and so on and so forth. So there's a top and a bottom of every inning, and there's an upper house and a lower house. All right, the number 6 and the number 2. In baseball, there are 6 infielders. There's a baseball diamond. You play around the baseball diamond, and the infielders are in the diamond. There's a first baseman, a second baseman, a shortstop, a pitcher, and a catcher, and a third baseman. So you got 6 of them. The 2 of those guys have more responsibilities than the other 4, the pitcher and the catcher. And more often than not, it's those 2 guys, the pitcher and the catcher, that are considered representatives of the team. Example, if you look at all of the tickets that went out for the St. Louis Cardinals, if you bought tickets this season, they all had pictures of either Yadier Molina, our catcher, or Adam Wainwright, our star pitcher. So they are the face of the team. They are the representatives of the team. The 6 connects with the senators' 6-year terms, and the 2 connects with the representatives' 2-year terms. Okay, so this one's also really important, and it's the idea of necessity. Players do whatever is necessary in order to prevent the other team from scoring runs. And I mean this very literally, because players will literally jump to catch a ball and injure themselves in order to prevent the other team from scoring. The picture that's up there is Ozzie Smith. He is perhaps the greatest shortstop ever in Major League Baseball, and also a Cardinal. We tend to get the good people. He is amazing. He would do backflips and everything to catch the ball. Like, he was crazy and amazing. In the Constitution is a very important section known as the Necessary and Proper Clause. And it states that Congress should do whatever is necessary and proper to protect the interests of the United States and its citizens. Now, I want to kind of talk about that, though, because we often think of necessity as something else. How would you define necessity? What is necessity? Go.
I would think it's something that some person would need to.
Something a person needs to survive. That's exactly right. So things that someone would need to survive would be food, water, clothing, housing, shelter, all that type of stuff. You need those things to survive. What do a lot of people mistake necessity with? Someone else. That's okay. Go ahead. You're the only one to raise your hand. Oh, yeah, want. Example, I really, 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 really want to try Krispy Kreme's new apple cider cake donut. Really bad. I don't need that. The scale this morning told me I totally didn't need that, but I want it. I'm sure there are things that you guys personally want. Some of you want more coffee. Some of you are ready for fall break. Some of you, how many of you are pumpkin spice people? Pumpkin spice people? Okay, yeah, some of you want your pumpkin spice latte. Yeah, we all have needs and we all have wants. And the problem is that we as individuals often mistake need for want. And if we as individuals, we humans as individuals, mistake need for want, we elect humans that are just like us to serve in Congress. So is it no wonder then that they also mistake need for want? So this is probably the most arguably abused clause in the Constitution, but maybe also possibly the most understandably so, because we all do it. It's not something that like not Congress people do. Like, we all do this. Okay, duties. Each fielder has specific duties they are expected to carry out. The pitcher pitches the ball. The catcher catches the ball. The infielders typically field the ball on the ground. They catch the ball on the ground. Outfielders tend to catch the ball in the air. Like, that's their jobs. The first baseman and third baseman protect the first and third base line. Like, that's their jobs. Similarly, the House and the Senate has specific jobs. The House coins money. They declare war. They set the budget. They impeach the president. And they regulate commerce. The Senate approves federal judges and presidential appointees. They ratify treaties. They try and either acquit or convict the president if the House impeaches him or her. So, like, each House has their own set of things they have to do. These lists here are incomplete. And I'm going to tell you that because if I wanted to list all the things the House does, we would have like 5 slides. Something I want you to know is the House does way, way, way more stuff than the Senate does. Another reason to want to be a senator, if you are a lazy person, that's the job you want. If you are a type A personality, I want to do all the things person, you want to be in the House. All right, checks on congressional power and checks on the fielders. Fielders do the best they can to keep the other team from scoring runs, but their success is limited by bad pitching and by questionable umpiring. I watched a game this weekend where the umpire called a ball a strike that was like the catcher had to reach to catch it. It was super duper not a strike. And I'm like, okay, what the hell was that? Similarly, Congress does whatever it can to pass laws that is limited by the president's willingness to work with it and potential rulings against that new law by the courts. So the president, if he doesn't like a piece of legislation, he can veto it and say, yeah, no, we're not doing that. It's possible for Congress to write a piece of legislation, for the president to sign it, and for the courts still to say no. So there are two checks on congressional power, the president and the courts. Removal. Fielders can be removed from the game if they perform badly or they do something illegal. Example, it's probably not a good idea as a Major League Baseball player to drop the ball. Probably not. Probably not good to miss a catch. Probably not good to hit a runner. No, don't do those things. Doing something illegal, starting a fight. So those things can get you removed from the game. Similarly, members of Congress can be voted out if their constituents think they've done a bad job, or they can be impeached if they do something illegal. This is a point I want to make here, and also I'll make it when we talk about the president too. You cannot impeach somebody because you do not like them. That is not how this shit works. You impeach somebody because they've done something illegal. Something that a congressperson may have done illegally would be take illegal campaign donations. They may have, back in the olden days, back in the 1800s, some of our Congress people got in trouble for like being in cahoots with governments, like foreign governments. Yeah, that's illegal, and you can be impeached for that. But to be fair, though, impeachment among people in Congress is super duper rare. Like almost never happens. All right, now the pitcher and the president. The pitcher and the presidency, I guess. All right. The pitcher is responsible for the game's outcome and is held responsible by his win-loss record. So if you Google Adam Wainwright statistics, he's our star pitcher. The first thing you will see is his number of wins and his number of losses. And whether those wins or losses were his fault, they were his fault. According to baseball pundits and generally fans in general. That may not be fair, but it is the way it is. Similarly, the president is held responsible for the various events that happen across the country and around the world during his tenure in office. The president gets credit, merited or not, for national successes and gets blamed, merited or not, for the nation's crises. So some things that go right, the president gets credit for that he legitimately never ever touched. Those are good days, when things go right and you get credit for something you didn't do. Conversely, though, there are things that happen all the time that go wrong, and whether the president had any control over it or not, he gets blamed for it. And this is true for every president in our history. Not just Biden, not just Trump, not just Obama, not just Bush. This is all of them. They get credit for things that go right, and they get blamed for shit that goes wrong. And a lot of times it's really not fair. Going back to 2010, when Osama bin Laden, the terrorist who orchestrated the September 11th attacks, was caught, he was caught in Pakistan by some elite people in the military. And President Obama's administration got credit for that. And as somebody who is tries to be really even-handed, I think probably the military deserves a little bit more credit for that than the president does, because it wasn't the president who did it, it was the military personnel who were in there who did it, if that makes any sense. Conversely, we'll go in, we'll mention this whole Afghanistan mess that we've got ourselves in. During the Trump administration, President Trump negotiated with the Taliban for us to withdraw by August 31st. And Biden could have changed that date, but he didn't. And there were a lot of pieces of advice he got from his advisors suggesting that maybe the Taliban army was going to be more successful in moving through the country, and we needed to move out faster. And that advice might have been ignored. So some things are legitimately the president's fault, or at least to a degree the president's fault, and some things aren't. And it's important for you guys to get to know the Constitution and what the president actually has control over and what he actually doesn't, so you can sift through the unique skills to shape the game the way they think has the best chance of helping their team win. I've mentioned Adam Wainwright. I swear I don't have a crush on him. He is a strikeout pitcher. He throws strikes right down the middle in the strike zone and gets batters to swing at them and miss. That's a strikeout pitcher. Some pitchers are contact pitchers. They force batters to hit balls right to their opponent players to get them out. All pitchers use their own unique skills to help their team win. Similarly, all presidents are different. I think we would agree that President Biden and President Trump are entirely different human beings and govern in entirely different ways. Not bad, not good, that they're just different. And because they are different, they use their own unique skills to help them get what they want because of, I would call it an interesting thing in the Constitution. Not a flaw, but an interesting thing. And it's known as the Executive Clause. The Executive Clause literally says that the president shall have the power to execute the laws. There's no directions there. That's really, really vague. And because that is so vague, presidents have used that clause throughout our history to slowly expand presidential power. So Joe Biden and Donald Trump and Barack Obama are inherently way more powerful than George Washington was. Presidents up until the 1840s thought their only job was to sign or veto laws. That is what most of them thought their job was to do. And now you see presidents doing all kinds of stuff. They are way more involved with their commander-in-chief powers. They're way more involved with local and state governments. Former presidents back in the early days of our country were not like that. They were way more hands-off. And some people think that this increased power is good, and some people don't. Because we're here for Democracy Days, I am of the belief that it's not good for presidents to be as powerful as they had become, Republican or Democrat. And the reason I feel like that is because the Founding Fathers designed our country in direct opposition to what they thought in the American Revolution. We thought the King of England. We did not like King George III. He was a jerk. And so what we designed our government to be was not an autocracy, not a dictatorship. And so we on purpose made the presidency, the executive branch, the least powerful branch of government. And because this clause has been interpreted over and over again, and the courts have not checked this power, the president is becoming dangerously close to becoming what we thought to not be. And so, I don't know, I believe in the founders' original intent in a lot of ways, and this is one of those ways. Like, I really feel like democracy is power through the people, and when you give too much power to one person, it becomes problematic. Okay, defense. Pitchers are the central defender for their team. Like, ultimately, pitchers are throwing balls and strikes and trying to get the other guys out. And if they are successful, your team is probably going to win. If they are unsuccessful, your team is probably going to lose. Presidents are also central to our defense because they are the commander-in-chief. They have the ultimate say-so regarding deployment of troops into conflict. That is particularly true since the end of the Vietnam and the War Powers Act. The War Powers Act of 1997 gave the president the ability to, without congressional approval, send troops into conflict for up to 90 days. After 90 days, though, the president had to go back to Congress and ask for funding and resources to continue the campaign there. Excepting one occasion, which was under the Trump administration, and maybe not even fair, as far as Congress maybe shouldn't have done this. The Congress has never rejected the president's requesting for stuff for our military. So the president really does have a large amount of control over our military. And that's really important because our military is one of the strongest forces in the world. All right, the number 4. Pitchers have 4 tools they can use to keep other teams from scoring. They can strike batters out. They can force batters to ground out to one of the infielders. They can force a batter to pop out to hit a ball high up into the outfield and one of the outfielders catch it. And they can intentionally walk somebody. I don't know if you guys have heard of this guy, but there was a guy that used to play for the Cardinals named Albert Pujols. His number was 5. He was amazing. He was from the Dominican Republic. And he was a phenomenal home run hitter. And my husband tells this story all the time. There was a NLCS game, a National League Championship Series game, where there was first base was open, and there was a runner on second, and the pitcher had a choice of whether or not he was going to pitch to Albert Pujols. And at that time, because Albert Pujols was so good, people wouldn't do that. And the pitcher chose to pitch to him. And an announcer on the radio says, the pitcher is going to pitch to Pujols. And the next pitch, Pujols hit a 2-run home run and won the game. So Pujols won, pitcher 0. Presidents serve 4-year terms. Presidents can serve 2 terms. It is possible for a president, however, to serve more than 8 years. Just imagine, right now we've got President Biden and Vice President Harris. Let's be real, Biden is a little bit old. If Biden were to die, Kamala Harris could take his spot as president. That would be that's what she's supposed to do. Serve out the rest of that term, and then she could run for 2 terms of her own if she was successful. So it's possible for somebody to serve more than 8 years, but no more than 2 terms. They can't be elected more than twice. All right, checks, just like we had with fielders in Congress. Pitchers do the best they can to help their team win, but bad fielding and questionable calls by the umpires can limit their success. Presidents do the best they can to execute the laws, but their success is limited by Congress's willingness to work with them and rulings by the Judicial Branch. Imagine a scenario where the president is Republican and the House and the Senate, the majorities are Democrat. Do you think the House and Senate are going to work with the president? Probably not. Maybe they should, but they usually don't. And that's a hang-up. Now, there are days, though, there are days where you got the House and Senate the same party as the president. It is possible even then for the House and Senate to get stuff done, the president to approve it, and then the courts to say no. So the president is limited in that way. So know that these branches of government can't do things on their own. These 2 can't. And the picture I put on there was one of our pitchers being ejected from the game. How many of you have heard of the sticky substance scandal? Yeah, I got baseball people out here. Okay, so the sticky substance scandal is when you throw a baseball, there's grooves on it. And it is easier to hold the ball if you have something on your hand. So I play competitive tennis, and a lot of people will put rosin on their hands to grip the racket better. In the same way with baseball, rosin is legal. Vaseline is not. Oil's not. And there are all kinds of players across Major League Baseball who have recently been caught using sticky substances in order to help them grip the ball better. All right, pitchers can be removed from the game if they perform poorly or they do something illegal, like doctoring the ball, like we just talked about. Then went to a game a few weeks ago, and he walked 8 people in a row. That's bad. He was removed from the game. Similarly, that pitcher that I showed you, his name is Gallegos. He got removed from the game. He was accused of having a sticky substance on his wrist. That's a picture of it in that picture. You can't do that. It's illegal. Similarly, presidents can be removed from office by being voted out if the people of America and the Electoral College thinks he is unfit, or he could be impeached and convicted if he or she has done something illegal. Again, just like in Congress, most presidents aren't impeached. Most presidents don't go through that process. Andrew Johnson did. Richard Nixon did. Bill Clinton did. And Donald Trump did. Those are the only 4 presidents who have ever been impeached. Nobody has ever been convicted. So something that is important for you guys to know is that impeachment does not mean the president has been kicked out. They also have to be convicted by the Senate. And that has never happened. So I grew up in a family that was traditionally Republican. I am not, though. I am moderate-leaning Democrat. And so my brother called me the night of Donald Trump's first impeachment just ugly crying. And he's like, oh my God, Donald Trump got impeached. He's gone. This is horrible. And I laughed at him. He's like, why are you laughing at me? He goes, I know you don't like him. I'm like, no. Like, he has to be convicted by the Senate. This is not over yet. Why are you crying? And so that's what I want you to know. Like, it is not just a one and done thing. The House and the Senate have to say no. The House and the Senate both have to have, come to the conclusion that you've done something illegal. Donald Trump is the only president to be impeached twice, and he was acquitted twice. So no president ever has been convicted. Okay, umpires and the judicial branch. In a regular game, umpires call 9 innings. Like we said that there's 9 innings of a game. Umpires call the whole thing. There are 9 justices on the United States Supreme Court. Now, it did not used to be that way. There used to be 6. Why is 6 a problematic number? Go. Yeah, and if you have an even number, you might end up with a tie. You may have 4 people on one side and 4 people on the other side, in which case you have no decision, and then the decision of the lower court would stand. Justices were added to the Supreme Court to, in most cases, avoid a tie. Justices sometimes recuse themselves from cases if they have some sort of personal stake in what the decision might be. But like 9% of Supreme Court cases, all 9 justices rule. So a tie is impossible. Umpires are selected by Major League Baseball and approved by the commissioner. The commissioner is like the head of Major League Baseball. Federal judges and Supreme Court justices are appointed by the president and approved by the Senate. Something that happens, and we'll talk about it more in my class, but something that happens when a Supreme Court justice dies or retires is that a president will go to the state that that justice came from and ask for advice on nominees from the senators from that state. That is known as senatorial courtesy. They don't always pick a person from that state as their nominee, but it is tradition that they go there first. Close calls. Umpires have the ultimate say-so in close plays. Even nowadays with video review, umpires are the ones watching and making the decisions in New York. So there are umpires who watch the videos, and they are the ones that make the call. It's not somebody else. Courts tend to hear cases that address ambiguity or controversy. In the cases of ambiguity, a call is made one way or the other. In cases of controversy, the court makes the call in favor of opposition to cultural debate. So when we talk about ambiguity, say that the federal law, the national law says something and the state law says something else. Example, in Colorado, it is legal for you to recreationally smoke marijuana. The federal government, the national government, still regards marijuana as a Class A drug, which means it's illegal. It is possible that a case will be brought before the court trying to resolve the ambiguity. The state government says one thing, the national government says another thing. Which one is right? Well, according to we're getting there. Hold that thought. Stealing my thunder. All right, it's all right. In terms of controversy, there are a lot of times the Supreme Court is asked to render a decision on something that's like a hot, divisive topic in the country. One of the most recent decisions was the Obergefell decision. The Obergefell decision was the one that ruled that same-sex marriage should be legal across all 50 states. And it actually came from the ambiguity pile. A same-sex couple who got married in a state where it was legal moved to a state where it was not. How do you file your taxes? In that state, they don't recognize the marriage that you are, like, you have documentation saying that you are married, and on your federal taxes, like, how do you file your taxes and not commit perjury and end up in jail? And so this same-sex couple took the case before the court, and the courts ruled, okay, this is an instance where we need a uniform policy. It had nothing to do with religion. It had to do with bureaucracy. Like, okay, so when you move from, like, Kansas, which at that time did not condone same-sex marriage, to Colorado, which did, you file your taxes the same way now. All right, other stuff. All right, home field advantage. Home field advantage is a huge deal in baseball. The home team gets the bat last. They're familiar with the layout of their field. They have a bigger clubhouse. They have bigger showers. And best of all, the players get to go home to their families after the game. Like, how many of you have a dog or a cat? Okay, or a snake, or like some kind of pet. Okay, so I would venture to guess that unless your pet is an absolute asshole, you love your pet. And there is something to be said to coming home to that little four-legged animal being excited that you're home. I know that after a bad day at work, there's nothing like seeing my little fat beagle Oliver standing at the top of the stairs like, Mom! The same is true for baseball players. And there is a similar advantage in government, and it's known as the Supremacy Clause. The Supremacy Clause states that federal law, the national law, should always supersede state law. So in the case of the marijuana thing, there are a lot of people who suspect if that case were to ever go to court, the federal government would win. And unless the national government were to slowly evolve and make it legal on their own, in which case a Supreme Court case would not be necessary. So know that according to the Constitution, federal law supersedes state law. Where this becomes tricky, though, is Amendment 10. Amendment 10 gives gives the states the right to make decisions on things that are not explicitly talked about in the Constitution, like abortion and same-sex marriage and weed. So one could argue that all of those issues are states' issues, because the 10th Amendment says that. But then the Supremacy Clause says the exact opposite, it seems. And so some constitutional law scholars see a contradiction here, or at least a question here, as to who actually has the greater power. But know that in most cases, the national government's decisions supersede that of the states. Change. The rules in baseball have changed over time. It's added instant replay, allowed people of color to play, added the designated hitter, where the pitcher doesn't have to bat, which is stupid. Changed the distance of the pitcher's mound from home plate, and so on. Similarly, the Constitution can and has been changed through the amendment process. African Americans, women, Native Americans, and young people have all gained rights and protections through this process. When the Constitution was ratified, the only people who were protected by the Constitution were rich, white, male property owners. And most of us would not fall into that category. I bet most of us are not rich. And so there we go. Half of you are not women. Some of you are not white. And some of you may not own your own personal property. And so if you think about it, unless the Constitution had been amended, we wouldn't have the lives we have. None of us. I'm a woman. I wouldn't have had the right to vote without the amendment process. I wouldn't have had the right to have a job. If my husband were to die, all of his property would have gone to the next male kin, which is crap, because I helped pay for it. But anyway, so the Constitution's amendment process has made this country what it is for all of you. And for that reason, it is so important for you to protect this Constitution and for you also to know that it can be changed. So if you, as a person who sees a problem, thinks things need to change, you need to be the agent of that change. Some people think there need to be more protections for other groups of color, so like Asian Americans. Some people think there needs to be an amendment that protects LGBT people. Some people think there need to be more amendments that protect young people or immigrants, and on and on and on. And like I think that's all true. Personally, I think that's all true. And we have to be willing to fight for those things. And we have to be willing to fight hard, because amending the Constitution is very, very hard. You have to get a majority in the House. There are Coke people in here and there are Pepsi people in here, and there's like 100 of you. Can you imagine trying to get like millions of people to agree on the same thing? It takes a lot of work. And so know that if you want to see change, you're going to have to be with that for the long haul. And that's one of the reasons I do like what I do. I teach government here, and I believe that in order to change things, I have to be an agent of change. And I have to encourage people like y'all to be agents of that change, and know that you are powerful enough to do it. All right, the number 27. In a regular game, the winning team must get 27 members of the opposing team out. So there are 3 outs per inning. There are 9 innings. 3 times 9 is 27. My math is really bad, but I know that's right. I checked it with the calculator. There are 27 amendments to the Constitution. And if you want to get really picky about it, home plate measures 17 inches across. And 17 amendments have been added since the Constitution was ratified. The first 10, the Bill of Rights, was essentially included in the first document. So that is how Major League Baseball compares to the United States Constitution. Does anybody have any questions? Cool. All right, well, it was a pleasure giving the presentation to you. I encourage you to go to some very fun and have a great day. May the force be with you. Yay.